Hello everyone and welcome to one of the requested returns of a series that was gone. It was death. It was not gonna, well, it was gonna happen again, but I didn't know exactly when. And of course I'm talking about the Lighthouse series. We were, I think, in chapter 20 or 20 something. Of course you're gonna see the title here. I'm just recording this. And the reason why we stopped working on this one was because Unreal Engine 5 came out earlier this year in full release. And when we made the transition, a lot of the techniques that we were using, or the techniques that I know were or worked for Unreal Engine 4, have now been updated for more like interesting and more impactful elements. So yeah, one of the things that I want to talk about is a little technique that I have for you guys, in which we're going to be using this shingles right here, where we're going to be creating a more interesting effect. These don't look bad, as you can see right here. I mean, it's not bad, but they look a little bit too uniform. They look a little bit too like woody, or not woody, like flat, like CG, right? Like they look like they were made with a computer, which of course they were, but I want to make sure that they look a little bit more interesting. So the cool thing is we actually do have the original shingles right here, and these are the ones that we're going to be using. So if we take a look at the UVs, you're going to see that the shingles have like a very simple UV. I'm just using a tileable texture. We're trying to keep things a little bit more like simple, but we're gonna go to the next level. So I'm gonna grab this guys right here. I'm gonna say file, export selection, and to keep things simple right now, because it's been a while, I'm gonna create a new folder here in the desktop just so that we can work on this a little bit easier. I'm just gonna call this shingles, and let's open ZBrush, of course. So the thing that's going to change with this ones is we now have access to Nanite, right? And we all know that Nanite is this really powerful software that allows, well, not software, like, I don't know, algorithm or something that allows us to pretty much have infinite geometry on our scenes. So we don't really have to worry about having really low polygon shingles for our element or anything. Like, we can do everything, since this is going to be a solid mesh, because that's one of the limitations of what's the word? That's one of the limitations of Nanite. It needs to be on a mesh that's not going to be moving. This is what we have. So right now, the first thing I want to do is I want to dynamesh these things. It seems like we have a couple of problems there. Do we have endguns? Oh, we do have endguns. Okay, that's my bad. So I'm just going to say mesh, triangulate. There we go. File. Let's export this again. That's why endguns are bad. Endguns, remember, are any like 5 or more, or any polygon that has more than 4 sides, so 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. So this one right here, ZBrush doesn't know how to compute that one, and therefore it crashes. I'm just gonna say import. Let's import this, guys. Okay, there we go. Since it's an FBX normally brings the texture in. We don't really need it, so I'm just gonna destroy that one. And if we hit dynamesh, as you can see, we can just like dynamesh every single shingle. Let's increase the resolution here to 156 and say dynamesh. So now that we have a dynamesh, what I can do, and this is what I'm really looking forward to. Let me move my microphone a little bit. Give me just 1 second. I have a slightly new setup here in my studio, and the places where I normally place things is it's just a little bit different. So what we're gonna do is, first of all, I'm gonna go to polygroups, and I'm gonna say auto groups, so we can like separate each shingle in its own like polygroup. And then I'm just gonna start adding a little bit of, you know, again, you know, I like this, or I love this word, visual interest. Let's bring this thing really high, like 1024. We're gonna go really high. That's not super high. It's 250,000 polygons. It's not the end of the world, but it should allow me to have like nicer, more interesting looks right here. I'm also going to use my clay buildup. This is a very old trick. If you use a clay buildup, one of the cool things is that you get this sort of like, I don't know, fibery, interesting looking thing. And for wood, it really works. It gives us this very nice wood effect, as you can see right here. And then what we can do is we can use trim dynamic and just flatten a little bit of this, guys. So we're gonna get this sort of like fibers coming from the shingle right there. There we go. Let's be a little bit more aggressive there. A little bit of like nicks and stuff. I wanna make these things look a little bit like rougher. And this is the thing, like back a couple of years ago, or not even a couple of years ago, literally last year, we couldn't do this because by changing the silhouette so much on our elements right here, that would mean that once we brought this into the engine, the normal map or something would not look as quite as nice. So that's why a lot of things in video games are very like square, very like hard, edgy, because having like a lot of rough or irregular edges increases the poly count dramatically, and that of course makes the performance suffer a little bit. So with nanite now, the advantage is that we don't need to do that, or we don't need to worry about that. We can literally, like, I could literally export this guys right here as I have them, and they will work perfectly fine. I'm not gonna do that though. We're gonna go through a little bit of an optimization process, which again, it's not super necessary, but it's gonna help us with the texturing process. One of the main things that I was worried about with nanite when I learned about this, like, how are we gonna texture now? Like, what's gonna be the process? Because I mean, we can't just take like a 5 million or a 10 million polygon model from substance from ZBrush into substance, right? Like that's just not possible. So there's been a couple of workflows that I've seen that allow us to work with textures. They're quite interesting. Some like with everything, things have like their ups and downs. Okay, that's a that's a problem. So I'm gonna go back to my clay buildup. I'm gonna go to brush, auto masking, back face masking. There we go. And the problem is when your brush is way too big, sometimes you end up like pulling geometry from the other side of the element, and that could produce some problems later on the bakes. So let's just fill this in. By activating that option that I just activated, which is called the back face masking, we are gonna be recovering that sort of stuff. So there we go. Cool. Now, the thing that I'm mostly concerned about right now is silhouette. Like, I want my shingles to have, like, cool-looking silhouettes, cool-looking elements, because at the end of the day, we are going to be using a tileable texture for the wood grain. This, like, lines and stuff, those are going to be, like, they're going to be adding a little bit of, again, visual interest to the whole thing, but they're not going to be, like, determining the way that the texture is going to be working. We're going to be using, again, a tileable texture for this. So let's just keep going here. Like now it's a little bit too straight again, so all of this like corners and borders, we can use again our trim dynamic to just soften and give those a little bit of a hit. Now we have a lot of them, and I don't think we need all of them, because we can at the end we can just like mirror them or something. But let's just keep going. So trim dynamic here. I'm just gonna hit everything with the trim dynamic first, and then I'll go back and do the damages. So there we go. So yeah, as I was mentioning, there's three main ways. I'm gonna try to explain them as I'm doing this thing, just so that you guys know what the deal is. The first one is a very, actually like an old school way of doing things, where you would model your low poly. You would not use dynamesh. You would just use like subdivision stuff and add all of the detail here inside of ZBrush. And then you would do like a traditional bake, low poly, high poly. You texture everything, but instead of using the low poly at the end, you end up using the high poly, which is just a subdivision of the low poly. Since the topology is quite clean and stuff, there shouldn't be any issues. Things should be working like quite nicely. And that's it's a very traditional way of doing it. The other one is literally ignoring the fact that the UVs of your object are going to be a little bit dirty. Like, we're not going to be using a lot of the rules that we normally use when we do UVs, and we just are going to get something that works. As long as we have a UV that works, that's it. Like, that's all we need, and we're good to go, right? So that's the technique that I'm going to be showing you today. And the final one is not even doing that, just using like automatic UVs and getting whatever you can get. So things are a little bit different now. The techniques that we're going to be using in the next couple of years are going to be quite fascinating. I was playing around with a little bit of photogrammetry, which is really interesting, and it's really powerful as well. So yeah, there's a lot of new technologies out there. So as I always say, you guys need to be aware of all of this and try to learn and incorporate all of these things. Back here in Mexico, I had my academy. It was called Critical Hit. I mean, I had because we no longer teach through my academy. I'm teaching at universities and stuff nowadays. But our motif, or I don't know what the name is in English, like a phrase or quote that we normally use, it was always learning, always improving. So I'm always learning new stuff. I'm always looking at new discoveries, new softwares, new techniques, new workflows, because that's the stuff that keeps you updated and allows you to keep offering something interesting to the market and to the clients, right? So you don't want to be the guy that does the same thing every single time. You always want to be like innovating and stuff. So there we go. We have all of our shingles. They look a little bit better, I would say. We can even go with like our move brush and just like give them a little bit of a different, like, so that they're not like completely straight, you know what I mean? Just like give them a little bit of an uneven approximation. There we go. So those would be my shingles. Those would be the elements that I would normally use. So I'm gonna again do a little bit of optimization here. I'm gonna clone this so that I have a copy of this, and I'm gonna go into C plugin, decimation master, and we're gonna decimate this. Right now they're at 250k, so I know that I can probably bring them to 35k or 75k. I'm gonna try 35k because we have a lot of them. And again, Unreal Engine doesn't really care about the amount of polygons now, but it will still take a little bit longer if you have a lot of polygons. So 35k, as you can see, we like have everything very nice here. The poly count or the topology looks nice. Like that's good enough. So yeah, let's bring this into Maya. So I'm gonna export this. Let's go back to our desktop. Let me move my microphone again. The thing is, I have my display tablet over here and my monitor over here. So depending on what I'm working on, the microphone's on the way. And if the microphone's really far away, then the sound sounds horrible. And I want you guys to get the best possible experience. So let's save this as FBX. Let's call this Shingles High Poly. There we go. Okay. So we're gonna bring this here, file, import, desktop, Lighthouse, Shingles. Did I save them? There we go. Import. Cool. So technically, they should be in the same place. Oh, let's go all the way down here. Yeah. Okay, let me open a new scene. Let's see, file, import, Shingles. There we go. I really don't know where they are in space, but that's what we want. So we need to get UVs out of this, and we're not going to be doing the traditional method. I did like the 5 steps to perfect UVs or to great UVs a couple of weeks ago. If UVs is something that you struggle with, make sure to check that video. Again, it was like 1 month or 2 months ago in the channel. Also, since we're here and we need help, of course, with the sponsors to keep the channel growing, let me remind you guys that we have this very cool Skillshare promotion. Hey guys, Abraham here. I just wanted to remind you guys that we upload all of our courses to Skillshare. Skillshare is this amazing site where you can access a ton of different content to learn, improve, and grow as an artist. We have all of our courses available to watch and learn from right now in Skillshare. You can check the description down here, and Skillshare is offering 1 free month trial to their premium membership. With this membership, you're going to be able to access all of our courses and watch and learn all of the amazing things that we cover with all of the softwares. So, what are you waiting for? Check Skillshare down here below. There we go. So now we're back here inside of Maya, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna get UVs for these things right here, and we're gonna do a super dirty, super easy way to do UVs. I'm just gonna go to the right view, and then I'm gonna go into face mode. I'm gonna grab all of the faces on the front like that, and I'm just gonna say UV planar mapping from the y-axis. I'm gonna hit apply. So what that's going to do is it's going to take a picture of the object from the top, and it's going to cut, as you can see, exactly where I had those faces selected. So this is easy for this specific piece because it's very flat. And if we were to go to my UV editor and we were to say, grab all of this guys, Control U to unfold. Let's just wait for this. This process is definitely going to take a little bit longer because we have way more polygons. And then we say Control L to lay them out. This is what we're gonna get, okay? So these are all of our elements right here. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab all of them, and then let's go to the right view, Shift Select to grab the other parts, and I'm gonna also planar map those parts because we should have. I'm a little bit worried about this like big hole right there. I mean, as long as it's not really touching the upper part, we should be fine. Okay, yeah. As long as there's no overlap, we should be fine. So let's just take a look at the elements right here. yeah, as you can see, like all of the other faces, they don't have any sort of like a UV map. Very easy to fix. The way we're gonna fix this is we're gonna go here, select faces, select all of these faces, and as you can see, all of these faces are selected. Just shift select all of the other faces, which are gonna be the back parts there. I'm actually gonna select that shell in just a second, so I'm just gonna say UV, and we're gonna do another planar mapping. There we go. So now I'm gonna go UV shell. I'm gonna select this guy, and I'm just gonna UV again, planar mapping. So they share the same sort of plane right there. Perfect. So we grab the object again. And over here, we just need to do another Control U to unfold. It is heavy, just be patient, and then Control L. And there we go. So with this, we can now create the actual kit of our shingles, right? Like if we were to use all of the shingles and just bring them into Substance, we can texture them, add them like metal edgeware and stuff, and that's it. But I want to show you a slightly different trick that we're gonna use here. Again, that option, like creating a kit of shingles like this and then just reusing it, is perfect. But there's one thing that I don't like about that thing, and that's the fact that when we like actually create the roof for the shingles, there is not going to be any ambient occlusion between the elements, right? Like Unreal won't know that there's like a little bit of ambient occlusion between one and the other, and that's fine, because yes, we do have like real-time ambient occlusion in a lot of softwares, which is going to give us a little bit of a shadow. But if we really want to have like dirt in between the shingles as they like lay on top of each other, we need a different technique. So that's the technique that I want to show you right now. So the first thing I need to do is I need to re-export this guy. So let's file, yeah, let's go back to Maya, file, export selection. Let's export this again as the high polys. Let's go file, recent files, Lighthouse, file, import, and we're gonna import the shingles again. Where are they? It's a really big question of where they might be. Where are you, my friends? Because I know we're importing them properly. See, okay, so this is what I meant. Like this guy's right here, we don't have any ambient occlusion. If we take a look at the UV editor, you're gonna see that we have like a very like basic UV, but we really don't have an ambient occlusion, and it looks fine, but it's not what we want. So let me look for those guys. Where could those guys be? It's really weird. I mean, they should be here. Oh, you know what? Okay, so something that might be happening is if they have the same name, they're not being imported because they have the same name. There we go. That was it. A rookie mistake. You cannot have two objects be named the same inside of Maya, because it will always respect the original one or the first one. So there we go. So now what I want to do is I am going to split this guys. This is the sort of like performance thing that I was mentioning. And I'm going to create just like a section like this one right here. I want to create just this section right here of shingles. So I'm going to grab this guy. I'm going to say mesh separate. There we go. And then we're going to say centered pivot. And just to be completely fair, it's 3 by like 9. 3, 6, 9. Let's do 3 by 10 so that we have an even number. And I'm gonna start with this like very basic one. So I'm just gonna like literally move them all together, or as close together as possible. Even if there's a little bit of overlap, that's fine. Because we're gonna play around with that a little bit in a little bit. Maybe let's just move this one to this other side and grab like this one and just duplicate it and have it over here. There we go. So that's 10. That should be 10. I'm just gonna grab all of them, Control D, move them forward. And I know that all of these guys are gonna be slightly rotated, right? So let's do like I would say like a -10 rotation. Probably the same with this one with this guys. So all of these guys, let's do a -10 rotation, just so they overlap nicely, right? I apologize, guys. For some reason, the recording stopped. I was doing this sort of thing where I was moving them around, and it stopped. So I'm just gonna continue from here. Normally, I record everything in a single go, but in this case, I have to go back. So the one thing that I did here, and I'm gonna have to probably just go back a little bit, is I duplicated these things, created the 3 rows, 3 by 10, and one of the important things here is that I use the randomized transform tool, which you're gonna find in the bonus tools. We talked about the bonus tools a couple of, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. It's a really, really cool add-on that we have here for Maya. It's completely free, and instead of this one, we have this modify randomized transforms basics. I've already explained on that video how this one works, so if you want to check it out, I would encourage you to look it here in the channel. But yeah, I just did a little bit, as you can see, -5 and 5 rotation to rotate them slightly, and then -1 and 1 movement on all axes to like push them up and down. And as you can see, again, if we compare this shingles that we just created to the old ones, I mean, you can see the difference, right? Like they look way, 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 way better, more like natural, more interesting. And I'm finally going to show you the way that we're going to be creating the textures for this one. So here's the interesting part. Pay a lot of attention. We're going to go to the UVs, and the first thing is, if we want to give each of them a specific ambient occlusion bake, like to like make the shape know that they're like on top of each other, then each specific shingle should have a UB. We cannot have like just a general UB, because then we're gonna have like double bakes and stuff. So we're gonna have to grab everything here and say Control L. So we're gonna have this super massive, well, not super massive, but it's gonna be a lot of UV islands, like 1 or 2 for each specific shape. And these are the UV islands that we're gonna be using. I'm a little bit concerned about this one right here. Is that the bottom part or something? Okay, it's the bottom part, so it's fine. As long as the top part is working fine, then we should be fine. So yeah, this is the object that we're gonna take. So I'm gonna grab all of this object. I am gonna combine it just to keep it clean. File, export selection, and let's export this as Lighthouse Shingles modular. Let's call this. There we go. And let's go into Substance 3D Painter. So the way we're going to texture this, we can't, and this is very important, we can't texture this in a traditional way. We could make a 4K map and paint specific things, but the problem is, imagine if we have like a 4K map specific for this like kit that we just created. If I painted that specific area that has like moss or damage, and then I repeat this kit a lot of times, what's gonna happen is you're gonna see the repetition like very, very often, right? So I'm gonna do something a little bit different. The only thing I really want to extract from this bake right now is the ambient occlusion bake, and you're gonna see why in just a second. So I'm gonna say File, New File. 4K is fine, and let's go to our Lighthouse, and let's grab the Lighthouse modular. Let's hit OK. So the thing that we're going to change is, yes, we're going to do our texture bakes, but I'm going to change the shader settings, and instead of using this mellow rough, we're going to be using this PBR material layering, because it's going to allow me to show you why this is going to be important. So now that we have that, I'm going to go to texture set settings, and we're going to bake mesh maps. 4K is fine. And we're just gonna bake like this, because again, the only map I'm interested in, or I'm really interested in, is the ambient occlusion map, because everything else is gonna be traditional wood. That's all we need. That's the map that I want, because that's gonna give me the nice little shadows and the nice little dirt that we're looking for. So here we hit OK, and that's it. So what's eventually going to happen, again, because we do want to have tileable textures for this, is we are going to be adding some sort of like wood material. So if I look for like this H walnut, there we go. We're gonna have this wood material, and we're gonna be like tiling this as many times as we need. But the cool thing is that later we can add, like we can actually add a fill layer of like a rust. We're gonna use like layers on the materials, and we're gonna be using like a rust or dirt to add that specific element. So let's say we go to the material, and the second material is gonna be like like a rust, as I mentioned, like dirt. Right now, the mask on this guy, like if I paint, that's going to be the rust. So I'm going to right click, add the generator, or sorry, right click, add the black mask. Sorry, again, I'm going to fill this layer with a white color, and then add a black mask and add a generator, and this is going to be a dirt generator. Okay. So this mask that we have right here, this mask that we're creating, that's the mask that we're going to be using on the engine to get this sort of like effect where we get like the depth of each specific shingle. okay? Because right now, again, we can't just like export this texture because these are two different materials, okay? So this is, again, another system called material layering, where instead of texturing with traditional textures, you're actually using materials and you're using masks to blend between those materials. Now, again, as I mentioned, the one map that I'm most interested in, it could be this one, like the dirt map. Let's even increase it a little bit more. I'm gonna increase it and let's remove a little bit of the grunge. There we go. So maybe I want the ambient occlusion and I want this map right here, or maybe I just want this map. I just want this map to be able to affect my my textures. Okay, so I'm gonna go File, Export Textures. We're gonna export this on our Lighthouse like folder, and we're gonna export this as this, like document channels plus normals plus AO. Like, we're not gonna do any sort of input, because what's gonna export right now, as you can see, is the mask and the ambient occlusions. Okay, so that's what we want, and I'm just gonna hit export. Now, if I take a look at the directory, you're gonna see that we have this ambient occlusion mask, which again is affecting every single shingle in a very nice way, and we also have this blending mask, which is, this is the dirt. Okay, now let's go back to Maya. And what we can do is the following. I can grab this object right here, and if I start like duplicating this a couple times in a very similar way to how we did the older roof, we'll just multiply this a couple times, just move this around, we're gonna be able to create our roof with very interesting effects. And here's like on top of this is where we would be layering the different materials, because all of this, guys, as you can see, share the same materials. So for simplicity's sake, I am gonna be, now let's do it in Unreal. So I'm just gonna grab this whole thing, File, Export Selection. Let's call this just Shingles Assembled, and let's go to Unreal. Yeah, we haven't done the Lighthouse in a while, so let's have some fun. Let's finish the whole thing. Give me just 1 second while this loads. Let me start closing some of the things that we're no longer using. So we don't need ZBrush. We don't need this one. Where is it? Lighthouse Story. I'm gonna also open the this maps right here, because these are the ones that we're gonna use. Again, we really don't need all of them. We just need the first two, so just delete everything else. Again, this is the mask and this is the dirt, right? So the ambient occlusion is gonna be good to, well, give us ambient occlusion, and the other one's gonna be good to give us the textures. So let's go to our map. This is not the one. We had another one. Let me pause real quick for this to load. There we go. So we're here in the level. Let's go. I had this little setup here. I'm going to create a new folder called Shingles. And here's where we're going to import our stuff. So import. We are going to go to our Lighthouse and we're going to import these shingles. Did I call them assembled? I think I did, right? Now here, it's very important. If there are multiple, I do want to combine the meshes. Just give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Had to take a little bit of a we had a little bit of a situation with the baby. So yeah, there we go. Here are the shingles assembled. Since the pivot point was not where they were supposed to be, as you can see, they're going to be like up there, which is of course uncomfortable. The ideal thing would have been to bring this guys to the 0 pivot point inside of a Maya, so that we don't have to deal with this sort of stuff. So there we go. Now, as you can see, again, the difference is, I would say, like quite a bit. Now, one thing that we definitely need to do, these shingles right now, they're still all triangulated. So we have all of the vertices, and I don't want it, because if I'm going to be duplicating these things and creating like a shingle wall or whatever, I need to make this a nanite mesh. So I'm going to double click this guys right here, and here I'm going to say enable nanite support and just hit save. This is going to convert the geometry into nanite geometry, and it will be better for the performance. Again, 250,000 triangles, it's not the end of the world, but if we keep like doing this, then it will definitely it will definitely be quite heavy for the whole project. So let's just wait for this thing to be rebuilt again. I'm just gonna pause real quick. And there we go. So now this is considered to be a 9/9 mesh, and it's gonna be way more optimized. Now I don't remember if we had materials here, but there has to be like some sort of wood material. I'm gonna do it in another. Here's another plugin that everyone should have if you're using Unreal. It's Windows, or sorry, Edit, plugins right here, and you look for substance in your EFI. Let's restart this real quick. Save selected. And this is a super useful plugin. It's very similar to the Substance plugin inside of Maya, where you can directly import or export SBSR, or not export, just import SBSR files. So if we go to our Substance assets, let me just make sure that I'm logged in here. It seems like I am. Let's look for wood, and let's look for some like rough old wood. I don't want to do rotten wood, but I do want like this sort of like old wood thing. This one looks cool. Akaju wood. This one looks cool as well. They look like furniture kind of woods instead of like outdoors kind of woods. Let's refresh this. The internet has been acting really weirdly here in Mexico, or at least here in the city. Like everyone's having issues with it. Natural walnut looks nice. This one, stylized wood beam. It's a little bit more like, well, as the name implies, stylized, but it looks quite nice. This H walnut looks very cool. I think we're gonna use this one. So let's just download this, and let's get the file. Downloads. And now, since we have the plugin activated, we literally just drag and drop this thing right here, and we just import it. It's gonna create a couple of different things. As you can see, it's gonna create like all of these materials. Let me go to the map. And here's where we're going to be doing the magic. We're actually not going to be using the instance material that we would normally get, because we want to build something a little bit more interesting for ourselves and for our shingles. I don't know what it is with this project. It takes a little bit longer than normal. There we go. Cool. So yeah, so if we go back here to the shingles, we can literally just like drag and drop this on top of the of this guys over here, sorry. And as you can see, this is already looking quite nice. The texture is repeating though, so as you can see, we get the same sort of effect everywhere. That's one of the things that, as I was mentioning, with this technique, it's gonna be a little bit difficult to avoid. One thing we could do is we could just grab all of this, give them a new UV, like lay them out and everything, and create their own UV, but it's a little bit too much. So what we're gonna do here's for the ambient occlusion. I'm actually gonna let's just reuse this material that we have right here, and I'm gonna grab like the walnut. Ambient occlusion is fine. We don't need metallic, normal, and roughness. Let's just bring these things right here, and let's rebuild this thing real quick. So the color is gonna go here to the base color. That's the ambient occlusion, and that's the roughness. So roughness goes right here, normal goes right there, and the ambient occlusion, here's where the trick is gonna happen. If you guys remember, we have these maps right here, the mixed ambient occlusion and the blending mask. So what I can do is I can bring these things here into my scene, and we can use this map. So we know that the ambient occlusion map is a map that tells us where like we have a little bit more shadow, right? Well, if we grab, let's say, this ambient occlusion and this dirt, which are similar but not the same, here I can say start previewing node. And what we're gonna see, this is the ambient occlusion that we're seeing. Right click, start previewing node, this is the dirt, okay? So what we can do is, what if we multiply this? If we multiply our ambient occlusion and this dirt that we created, and we preview this node, what we're gonna see is that we get this very interesting effect where we're gonna get, remember the white points, those would be the that's the shadow that we want, right? So the problem here is that we're getting the inverted effect. We would get like shadows pretty much in a lot of places that we don't want. So one thing we can do is we can do a minus. If we do one minus, it will invert this thing. So let's preview this node, and as you can see, this is gonna look a little bit more like an ambient occlusion, and we're gonna get this very cool effect. So now what we can do is we can multiply this Actually, now that I think of it, it was looking a little bit weird. Let's try first multiplying these two guys right here. So now we're gonna multiply the wood ambient occlusion against the like dirt ambient occlusion. Let's see what we get. That looks really, really interesting, as you can see right there. But I'm not sure that's the colors that we want, and we can very easily see this if we just plug this into the ambient occlusion like this and we just save. We're probably gonna see like a very dark texture on the shingles out here. Or you know what? Let's, to make this thing a little bit easier to see, let's bring this into the color. Oh, silly me. There we go. Okay, so that's the ambient occlusion, or that would be the ambient occlusion that we would get, and that's exactly what we want, like right, that dark elements. But I think we do want them to be on the other side. So let's bring this back in. Let's keep it like this and see how this looks now. So I'm not seeing that much of a change. Let's try the 1 minus here to the ambient occlusion. Save. Yeah, I'm not saying that much. But one thing we can do though, and this is all about shading, is we know that this result is really good, right? Technically, if we look at this, we should see that those dark edges and dark points, that's what we want. That's the sort of like ambient occlusion that we want. So what I can do here is I can multiply the color as well. So help the color. If I do this and I preview this node, you're gonna see that we gotta have those like dark spots and dark elements all around the element. So now we plugged in into the base color. Since all of the shingles share the same UV map, we should have a little bit more, look at that, a little bit more shadow on the elements. Now what we can do is, I know that the shingles, they look good, but the texture is a little bit too like low poly. And here's the cool thing. Since we're using all of these textures, we can go to this element right here. And, or sorry, not that one. We can go to, yeah, it's this one actually. This one right here, and we can change the time that this thing is repeating on the UV map. Or rather, to keep things a little bit simpler, I'm just going to use a texture coordinate. There we go. And we're going to use this to multiply just the wood, because the wood is the only like tileable thing that we're using. We want to keep the other one, like this one right here. This is just in the traditional UV, so we don't want to multiply that, but we do want to multiply this, let's say 5 by 5. And what that's going to do is the 1K texture that we were using is going to be repeated 5 times, so we're going to get a lot more detail. And as you can see, the shingles are going to look way, way nicer while still keeping the sort of like dark ambient occlusion there on the corners. And as with anything, like if you say, hey, you know what, like maybe I did like this sort of like effect that we had right here, like why not just multiply this one over here? We can do that. Let's see how that looks. So it looks okay, but as you can see, it's it's inverted, right? Like we're getting the dark colors instead of the white colors. So maybe the only thing we need to do is run this through an inverse node and get this in here. Maybe we don't want to use the ambient occlusion from the element. I think the 1x, I mean, it is working, but it's like crunching my elements a little bit too much. Like it's becoming way too dark. So what can we do here? Because I think something that we can do is we can add another multiply here, and before we invert it, we multiply this. Let's preview this node, because right now we're multiplying by 1, so it should be exactly the same. But if we multiply by something like 0.5 or like 0.1, yeah, as you can see, this is going to darken it. And then when we do this, that's way too much. So maybe let's multiply by 2. That's a little bit, 1 should be the same, 1.5. I think 1.5 looks a little bit more interesting. We get some darker spots here and there. There we go. That's the sort of like dirt that I'm expecting to have. And that's it. So now the shingles are gonna look a lot better. So yeah, I mean, for what I want you guys to get from this is the fact that, one, we're using nanite to create like more interesting looking shingles, and we're using a little bit of tricks here with the ambient occlusion to give them more depth, to make them look a little bit more interesting. Now, the one thing that I did want to mention before we finish this video is, since we're using this procedural elements, at any point I can go here change the original textures, and since again we're reusing this, guys, that's going to change the way our basic textures works. For instance, if I don't want the veins to have as much contrast, as you can see, I can change them here. And again, since we're sampling this texture and this texture is being generated from this node, anything that we change on this node is going to affect that. Maybe the color of the things, like we want them to be like purple or blue or something. Like we can do a lot of very cool different things. I think this was like roughly the color that we have on the original one. And yeah, this is how we would do it. Like we would use this node right here to generate the textures, and then we would create our own like stylized or procedurally generated material to create a little bit more of an interesting effect. So that's it, guys. That's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. If you were able to see the whole video, then leave a comment down here. What else would you guys like to see? We're still going to continue with the helmet, don't worry, and we're continuing with this one. I want to show you a couple of new and interesting techniques as well for like the walls and some of the wood beams and stuff to get an even better looking result here with the Lighthouse. So yeah, hang on tight, and I'll see you back on the next one. Don't forget to check our links, like, share, subscribe, and that's it for me. Bye-bye.